user interface, extra bars or whatever to
Hmm.
specifically for Zerg. And some of the people shot it down like, well, the pro players don't need it now. Well, yeah, well the pro players are pro because they're pro, they're good. And they can even if let's just say there was a lack of information for the Zerg player, lack of knowledge, or you have to remember more timers or other things in your head and get a feel for it.
Hmm.
Then yeah, that definitely separates the pro players from the Zerg players versus an A move Terran ball.
Yeah.
So I guess what would you feel would be good stuff or additional information, stuff that you feel that would be lacking? And while you're thinking about that, I'll say that the topic I was mentioning, he posted on there and say like when you have your I think it's when you have your hatcheries in a hotkey that there would be a progress bar going over your hatchery for injects,
Okay. Yeah.
for example, so that I could hit my hotkey and I could if I'm curious about injects, I don't necessarily have to
Yeah,
go
you can just
to
see how the timing's
my
going on
base.
them. Yeah, and that makes sense, and I can totally relate with people wanting to simplify things like that. You have to understand, I come with a little bit of a Brood War background. I'm one of those guys that um, feels like the game needs to be hard. There needs to be a high level of mechanical demand to play it at the top level, because that's what makes a truly competitive like e-sport. If we were to sit here and talk about what games have really been fun and competitive and beautiful at the highest level. You have StarCraft Brood War, in my opinion, Super Smash Brothers Melee, if you know what that game is.
I
Um,
do. I didn't know there was a high level
there's a
pro
huge,
tourney play for
yeah,
it.
man, and it's because of the mechanical demand, in my opinion, it's because of the mechanical demand associated with playing the game. You look at games like Quake. There's a tremendous mechanical demand associated with playing that game in terms of
Yeah, I went to Quake 2 tournaments. That was my
well, there you go.
big game
You,
back in my day.
bunny
Q2,
hopping and all
Q2
that shit.
CTF. Oh yeah, strafe jumping.
Yeah, exactly. That creates a mechanical demand for players to overcome. Like a casual player can't bunny hop for shit, can't rocket jump for shit,
Well,
can't.
I think that's different. To cut you off for a second, I think that's a little bit different than what I was asking. There's a difference between that, I think, and having the information that the player needs in order to play effectively. So if I could break down one of your examples and take it to the absolute horrible extreme, is we would take today's StarCraft 2 play and take away, basically make the game harder. You can't hotkey your units. You could maybe click drag, highlight a whole bunch of units and tell them to do something, but you couldn't stick them on hotkeys. You
Hmm.
couldn't. You start stripping away all of those things, and suddenly, yeah, there would be pro players that could still do it all.
Yeah.
They would figure some weird APM way where they're basically typing 300 words a minute on the keyboard to make all this execute, and they would win. But I think there would be ways of doing it better. So they added in control groups, and they've made multiple enhancements,
You're right.
and
You're
just to
you're
show the
you're
player
absolutely right. And could you make
more
adjustments
information.
to the UI to make the game more playable? Yes, of course.
Well, I mean, just even specifically for Zerg, I'm not saying additional widgets or pop-up menus to say, warning, you're not injecting. I'm not talking about silly stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about,
You're
like the
talking
guy
about
posted the
a
progress bar.
taskbar over your hatchery when you're fucking selecting them. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
or,
can
or other
totally,
stuff.
I can get down with that, and I can relate with that, sure. But at the same time, as somebody with decent macro, I'm proud of the fact that I nail my injections. I'm proud of the fact that I can play a 20-minute game and not bank 2,000 minerals before I max. That's part of the things. That's one of the things that makes me feel like, I've sort of earned my very non-prestigious, my very mid-level, but it makes me feel like I've earned that spot that I have on the ladder. It's not a high spot, it's a 3K diamond or master. It's okay. Top 500 North America maybe if I'm lucky. I'm not a top tier player, but I'm proud of the things that I can do when I play. And the
Sure.
reason that I'm proud of that is because there's little shit that's hard to do. So you know, it,
And you can do it, and I mean, I'm not trying to jab at you or anything, but you can do those hard things, and someone like myself can't yet. So
Yet.
you